American evangelicals are some of the strongest supporters of Israel, and that's the truth today. But new research shows that could be changing. Support among younger evangelicals is slipping. CBN's Brody explains why this is happening and what it means for the future of the Jewish state.
A series of polls show support for Israel among American evangelicals under 30 fell more than 35% in just 3 years. There's added concern that misinformation across social media regarding the war in Gaza could lead to an even greater drop.
The reason why I think young evangelicals might remain very skeptical and not particularly supportive of Israel is because they're being bombarded with, I don't want to say anti-Israel messages, but not particularly favorable messages toward Israel at the time when they're forming their foreign policy beliefs.
3 surveys conducted by researchers at Boston University and UNC Pembroke from 2018 to 2021 indicate this change came during a pivotal turn in Israel-Palestine relations.
And what we found in that survey was that attitudes became more negative towards Israel.
As of 2021, roughly 1/3 of young evangelicals surveyed support Israel, compared to more than 2/3 in 2018. During that same period, support for Palestinians rose from 5% to almost 25%.
Free, free Palestine!
Also, the number of respondents saying they support neither Israel nor Palestine nearly doubled from 25% to almost 50%.
What has changed is the introduction of social media. Younger people now have much more diverse opportunity to get information than the other generations in the past did not have.
Another finding shows pastors are changing, including a drift in their support of Israel and how they interpret the Bible.
And that change is from a more pro-Israel, premillennial dispensationalist position to one that really does not see much importance to the contemporary state of Israel or the Jewish people in the end times and in the second coming of Jesus Christ.
The authors have published their findings in their book, Christian Zionism in the 21st Century, American Evangelical Opinion on Israel.
We have to understand.
Dr. Yoav Fromer at Tel Aviv University emphasizes the importance of this study.
That without the United States, Israel will not exist. And again, I say this as an Israeli.
He adds the future of the Jewish state depends on the next generation of U.S. evangelicals.
I don't know if my children will have a country to live in.
One unexpected outcome identified by doctors in Brody and Bumin is how this younger generation that is sometimes bombarded with pro-Israel messages can be turned off, comparing it to teenage angst or rebellion.
So on the one hand, we found that socializing with other young evangelicals who support Israel reduces support for Israel. On the other hand, we found that young evangelicals are very strongly motivated by perceptions of fairness. How fairly do Israelis treat Palestinians in the occupied territories? And if they feel that they're treated fairly, right, then they're more likely to support Israel.
The authors note several generational shifts, including changing beliefs on end-time prophecy and how Israel figures into it, which could potentially reshape the overall evangelical movement itself. They challenge leaders to engage young believers by using new methods and platforms that resonate with them. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Well, for more on this story, we have a young evangelical right here on set. So, young evangelical.
Yes.
I know you support Israel.
Yes.
Why is there a shift now?
I think it's because there's a lot of social media influence on the younger generation. The pro-Palestinian organizations, individuals really are blasting social media with ads. I mean, I was, obviously in this age demographic target audience for this pro-Gaza kind of ad, even on YouTube. I was watching a YouTube video. I was very surprised. I was like, oh, my views don't really align. But my age does with who they're trying to target with this messaging. The messaging wasn't necessarily completely anti-Israel, but it was geared towards Gaza and the innocent lives in Gaza, which absolutely I support. How do we support those innocent lives in Gaza? But it's just interesting. I see it even amongst, people that I know. They're obviously very anti-Israel, and so that's pretty shocking for me. But I will be honest, before I ever started working at CBN, I was very ignorant to the importance of Israel and how, our Jewish brothers and sisters play an integral part in the gospel message and the story of God. And
without them, there isn't.
Right, exactly. So I was very ignorant to that until I started to educate myself with even the films that CBN has produced, like In Our Hands, The Hope, The Rebirth of Israel, all of those things. It started to make sense to me. So ultimately, I think the younger generation just isn't educated on the history of the Bible and the history of our Jewish brothers and sisters and why it matters still today. So,
well,
yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, this old evangelical is getting the same ads and the pre-rolls on YouTube. So I don't think they're necessarily targeting you based on demographic. They're targeting you based on what you're watching. So if you're watching stories about Israel, if you're watching stories about Gaza, then they want to plant this message to you. That how important it is to protect the civilians. I actually think that's a good message. But that's a message for Egypt and for Jordan.
Exactly.
That you have to create areas for the innocent civilians to evacuate so that Hamas can be destroyed. I keep emphasizing Hamas has to be destroyed.
Absolutely.
They have pledged to attack Israel again and again and again and again until Israel doesn't exist. By saying, well, we need to support the innocent Gazans, you're necessarily saying, well, I now, by implication, am supporting the entire destruction of Israel. I don't think it's unique, and I actually had a conversation in December with a young evangelical, and it was interesting that they didn't even want to engage. And it was all based on, well, I've seen other stories on the internet. And so those perceptions have been formed, and I know enough about psychology, about frozen perceptions, that one of the hardest things to do is to convince somebody that their opinion is wrong. They'll even resist when facts are put in front of them. But the thing I keep telling people is when you hear the chant, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's one of the slogans of the Palestinian movement. What that means is the entire destruction of Israel and the genocide of every single Jew living there. And history supports that. When you look at the history of the West Bank, when you look at the history of Jerusalem from 1948 to 1967, it was illegal to be Jewish there. They destroyed all the synagogues. They didn't allow Jews even in the Jewish quarter of the old city. They couldn't come pray at the Temple Mount. All of that was illegal, and they put their lives on the line. If they were ever caught there, they would be killed. This needs to be taken seriously. We need to know the history.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great way to actually know the history is something that CBN has created. It's called Whose Land Is It? It's a documentary series. There's different episodes that you can watch to educate yourself on the historical and biblical claims to the land of Israel. There's so many misconceptions out there that the younger generation are being infiltrated with. And I would just encourage anyone who's watching, whether you're 30 and under or you're 30 and over, it is important now more than ever to educate ourselves surrounding all of this. So make sure you guys get it. It's called Whose Land Is It? Give us a call, 1-800-700-7000, or go to cbn.com/whose land.